Well, hello guys, welcome to my channel. I hope you're all doing well. Today is part 2 of sorting out my garden. Now, unfortunately for some of you guys, I won't be wading through shoulder-high brambles and knee-high grass. I will be simply getting my garden ready for the year ahead, so we're going to be doing some planting, taking some cuttings and talking about some other plants. Many of you enjoyed the last video, so I hope you enjoy this one as well. But rest assured, my next video, which I've got lined up, where I'm going to be helping out a landlord, is very much a messy garden that needs rescuing. But before all of that, I'm going to rescue my own garden. And today we're going to be making a start in one of my little herb patches where you can see strawberries have become the invasive invader. So growing in here, I've got some fennel, I've got thyme, I've got dill, sage, and also some little chives. But it all needs a good tidy up. The sage is about done, so I'm going to take some cuttings from here, and I will show you the most cowboy method for taking cuttings you've probably ever seen. Yet it always seems to work for me. So step 1, I've got a nice bunch of sage here on relatively well seasoned wood. I'm going to strip off a lot of these leaves, especially the large ones, and then I'm going to use my secateurs and I'm going to trim it just below one of the nodes. This is a leaf node or a bud or whatever you want to call it, and this is where the roots are more likely to appear. Now, the reason I'm stripping off a lot of these leaves is to reduce the amount of moisture that this cutting will lose. Fortunately, sage leaves are really easy to do this. They're quite silvery and furry and don't tend to dry out very quickly. Now, I could be a little bit more gentle taking off these leaves. I am just ripping them off the plant. I could use a pair of secateurs or a pair of snips, but this still works. All of those lavender plants you can see in front of me, I used exactly the same method with those, and I only took them at the back end of last year. And every single one of those rooted. And then the next step, I'm going to fill a pot up with some seed compost. I'm going to use seed compost because it's quite sandy, it's very well drained, and it's also quite cheap, and I've also got it. But I could actually root them with a little bit of soil mixed with a bit of sand, or any variation of something like that, as long as it's well drained. I'm going to pop them around the outside of the pot again to help with the drainage. And then I'm just going to keep them moist. I'm not even going to put a bag over these because they won't need it. And with these sage cuttings, I'm not even going to use any rooting hormone. Why? Because I'm a little bit lazy, and if I don't need to do something, I won't do it. So I'm just going to pop these in the greenhouse, keep them moist, and that is it. And I will let you know how it goes. And if you don't like that method, you could always try rooting them in a little pot of water. I've also done that before and been quite successful. But any method that doesn't take much time is tops in my book. I would also like to thank June's Journey for sponsoring today's video. As you could imagine, having 4 kids and a full-time job and helping people out in their gardens keeps me pretty busy. But my wife happens to be 10 times busier than I am, and she is the person who introduced me to June's Journey. June's Journey is a free-to-play hidden objects game with a murder mystery storyline that's set in the glamour of the 1920s. What I really liked about June's Journey is how visually stunning these scenes are, and this really helps set the mood for the game. My wife, on the other hand, really likes how she can just pick this up even when she's only got a few spare minutes. But also, when time allows, she gets to spend a little bit longer, and this is normally in the evenings, working through this epic storyline. And not to mention a bit that we both really like is where she gets to pick things out and design her own garden. And this can only be a good thing for me because one day she might even give me some tips. Download June's Journey for free by clicking the link down in the description or the QR code on screen. June's Journey is available on Android and iOS mobile devices. Well, that's the sage cuttings taken care of. Now it's time to get stuck into the rest of this herb bed. So I'm just going to try and neaten up this dill now, but I've also thought about another crazy experiment I could try. Now, I've not done this before, but I feel like it should work. So if you look closely at the dill stems, you can see these little nodes have sprouted what look like tiny little plants. So I'm simply going to clip those off I'm going to put a few in the soil in the herb garden, and I'm probably going to put 1 or 2 in the greenhouse, and I'm going to see if I can get these rooted. Like I say, I don't know if it works, but I'm not going to lose anything by trying. But I've always thought if you're not failing in a garden, you're probably not learning. So I'm going to work my way down this border now. There's a lot of randomness going on. I've got a few little pots here with some parsley growing in it that strangely was planted the same time as the other gigantic parsley plant that's growing in the raised beds behind me, and also a thyme in this blue pot that's not doing really well. So I'm just going to pull as much as I can out with as much of the root and put that next to the other thyme in the herb bed, and hopefully that will recover over time. No pun intended. There are actually quite a lot of plants down this thin border. This one is a peony. It might not look like much at the moment, but it's absolutely fantastic when it flowers. Now I don't need to do a lot to this, just clip off the dead old growth. And I've also found a hyacinth. Forgot I even had that. And also a pot of rose cuttings that I took a few years ago. And 2 out of the 4 are still alive. I also have quite a lot of pots with spent compost in. Now I can't do a lot with the spent compost, but I can use it as a soil improver and just mulch it a little bit around. Doesn't need to be too thick because I'm not doing this to prevent weeds from growing. I'm just doing it to improve the soil structure. Now there is one little tip I'd like to give you when you're doing your springtime tidy up and you're pulling a lot of that dead growth out. Just be a little bit careful. Some of this dead growth will come away quite easily, and some of it will bring part of the plant with it. So just remember, be careful, and if you can, use your pruners and don't yank it out. So the way to treat lavenders is pretty much the same way I always do. Grab a big handful, trim it down like you're giving someone a haircut. And if you can, try to avoid cutting into anything that's too woody or at least hasn't got any growth showing from it. But the main thing for me is just to neaten it up a little bit. The plant will do everything else. A lot of this wispy growth you can see me pulling out looks a lot like dead grass. These are actually the gladioli bulbs from last year. Again, another fantastic plant and so easy to look after, as long as you can stop those flower spikes from blowing over in the wind. Now I found yet another random pot lying around my garden. This one is actually where my daughter sowed some of the wildflower seeds that she got from nursery. They've all grown, but anyway, if you're potting on something like this, they always say give the roots a little bit of a tickle. Give them more of a tickle, break them if you can on the bottom of the pot. This will encourage the roots to grow even more. So with strong, healthy roots, you get a strong, healthy, tough plant. And that's what I want in this garden. I want really tough plants that will survive pretty much anything our weather can throw at it. So coming up next we have one of my all-time favourite perennials, a verbena. Now these are really tall and look really leggy. The amazing thing about these is when they're in flower they don't blow over more often. I didn't have any problems with any of mine last year. Plus this plant would take centre stage if you wanted to grow something to attract pollinators into your garden. This tiny little tree here is actually an apple tree. I'm going to chop all of these suckers off because this is actually a grafted variety, so those suckers aren't going to come true, so they're coming off. I actually got about 3 apples on it last year. Hopefully this year there'll be a few more. The reason that I'm actually perched on top of these wooden sleepers so much is because if you can see, I've left a bit of long grass next to it, and that's where all my bulbs are growing. I'll probably put some more bulbs in next year, but I've left it long. This is really good for wildlife and it's really good for the bulbs, although some people think it looks a little bit untidy. Although it's not very good for the 240-pound gardener that has to balance on them while he's doing his weeding. Well, I'm never the sort of gardener that complains about weeds, but look where this dandelion has managed to root himself right on the inside of one of my peonies. This is not going to be much fun trying to weed this out without snapping any of these brand new peony shoots. But there is a little bit of good news to go with this. I've also found this tiny little periwinkle growing there. I really haven't got a clue where this has come from, but I'm going to leave it and see what happens. So down this border it's slightly bigger, but pretty much the same treatment as the rest is getting. I'm just pulling out all the dead growth. But somebody did ask me about fruit trees that I planted last year. This one is a plum tree and it's doing really well and got plenty of buds coming on it. And this one, luckily for me, is self-fertile, so I don't need any of my neighbours to get a plum tree, so I can have some plums this year. Fingers crossed. And please drop me a comment if you remember this shrub in front of me from last year's video, which of course is a choicea, which I pruned at the completely wrong time of year, and someone did comment saying you're going to lose all your flowers for this year, and you were totally right. And just goes to show even the garden guy makes some mistakes. As I'm weeding around this section of the border, you can see a tree growing in front of me. This one is a hawthorn. Now, I'm not really sure if this is a self-set tree that's been growing for a decade or so in this garden, but it's not really a normal choice for a family garden to have a hawthorn, of course, because of the gigantic thorns. And also, this one is planted in between an apple and a plum tree, so I'm guessing in the next episode I'm gonna have to take this tree out, and a lot of you will know how I feel about taking perfectly healthy trees out. And this lovely plant here is a Cyannodoxa. I think I've pronounced that right. Please let me know in the comments if you think I'm right. I don't know where this has come from, so I'm assuming the lady who used to own this house actually planted it. And I'm very glad she did, because I don't see these around very often. Now if you check out my little trellis on the back here, you'll see some ivy. Yes, I purposefully planted some ivy. And there's also a Virginia creeper just starting to, well, creep up the trellis. And this is the final part of this small garden. As you can see, my little nature log pile there. Please ignore the little Tykes car that's parked on top of it at the moment, but that's going to be on my list of things to do in the next video. I've still got plenty to do. So thank you for watching this video. I know it's a little bit different than usual, but I really hope you enjoyed it. And here is my list of things to do in the next video. Starting off with my hanging baskets that need filling, and also these containers need a good tidy up, and I want to plant some more strawberries. And next on the list, I've also got a lot of patio slabs that need relaying all the way down to my raised beds. And also this section down the side of the greenhouse, I'm sure everybody's got a place like this, which is essentially a dumping ground. And my bird feeders also need sorting and cleaning and refilling. And then finally, the secondary dumping ground also needs sorting. So once again, thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. I will see you in the next one, where I'm going to be helping out a landlord who is in desperate need of a garden rescue.